Hey everyone, welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. I got a really, really sweet and special freaking guest with me today, Mr. Daniel Weisfield with Three Pillar Communities. Now, Daniel, he's crushing it out there. Let's just be
Don't
real.
Derek, don't say that. Can I just pause you and don't say that? The more you build me up, the easier it is to fall. I'm just trying to put one foot in front of the other and learn from my mistakes every day.
Yeah. And look, I think that's what we're all doing. But I'm excited to have you on, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and when we got on here before, you were like, "Man, dude, I just got my ass kicked in a little boxing class." And I love that.
Yes.
And I love talking about that. I could do a whole podcast talking about workouts and crazy stuff to do. But
Yeah.
I why do you do that? And why do you put yourself through that? Do you do that every day? You do something every day? Yeah.
No. So I have massive admiration for people who actually are disciplined and stick to a schedule and manage their time well and work out and eat right and all that stuff. That is not me. I am not naturally disciplined. I am not naturally good at creating habits and sticking to them. I am if you look at different personality types, I'm like abstract thinker, chasing different opportunities, big picture, seeing the vision. Very hard for me to drill down into details. I'm bad with numbers and I'm bad at making lists and getting things done. So I am not a consistent workout guy, but I love it when I do it. When I manage to make myself do it, I never regret it. It was always the best thing I did that day. And so I'm trying to make time to surf, which I love, yoga and stuff that's good for your spine.
Yeah.
I love dancing. I like to dance with my kids. I got little kids. We wrestle with my little kids. That's the kind of stuff I'm into.
Yeah. I love that.
How about you?
Yeah, look, I used to be super rigid on the schedule. I'd get up at 4 a.m. and it'd be boom, the same thing every day. But now I've structured it to where it's my most productive time during the day is really early in the morning or later in the evening. No kids are freaking yelling and running around going crazy. Your phone's not blowing up. And so I kind of work out every day. I just get it in when I can get it in now. Could be 8 a.m., could be 7, could be 11, could be 4 p.m., could be 7 p.m. It just I'm not as rigid with it as I used to be. I still get it in every day. It's just how does it work with my schedule? Because if I'm I used to go first thing in the morning. If I'm so productive in the morning, it's why am I going to waste the time in the gym? I'm just going to the gym when I can be productive. Yeah.
Let me ask you a related question.
Sure.
People think that if you start your own real estate investment company, you'll have a lot of time freedom. Do you find that you have time freedom, or do you find that you're busier than ever?
That's a great question. I mean, look, and you can probably speak to this too. It's I do have time freedom. If I want to go do something, I can go do it, right? I think you probably feel the same way. But there's a lot of stuff going on, especially when you're growing, you're doing deals and you're getting deals. There's a lot of shit going on, right? And sometimes I feel like maybe there's not as much time freedom. But the thing about it is, though, is I love it. What about for you? Do you think is there more? You have more time freedom?
I think technically I have more time freedom because I don't have a boss telling me I need to be at my desk.
Right.
But I am my boss, and I'm a pretty demanding boss on myself. And
Correct.
I am working more than I've ever worked on this thing. But like you, I love it. I love what we do, providing attainable housing to people and creating better neighborhoods and getting great returns for our investors. I love that. And
sure.
and ultimately at the end of the day, I like being my own boss, right? We own the results, we own the failures, we own the successes. It's all the buck stops here. And so when you work like that, it's satisfying work.
For sure. What did you do before Parks? Did you work someplace before? What did you do?
So I mean, can I give you a little family background even? I think that might be relevant kind of for listeners in the show. I'm a third generation mobile home park investor, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my mom and my grandfather were both born on a chicken farm in Israel, and they immigrated to the US with nothing. And my grandfather worked as a car mechanic when he got here. and he saved money from fixing cars and eventually opened up a body shop, and then saved money from that and he bought a mobile home park like 50 years ago, 40 years ago.
Wow.
As a kid, I'd go help him in the summers. We go to the body shop, we'd straighten out bumpers, and then we'd go over to the mobile home park and we'd, dig ditches and paint fences and fix things. So I grew up around that. It literally never occurred to me that mobile home parks is something I might do when I grew up, right? I had all sorts of other professional aspirations. I ended up going to college. I actually went to law school. I got a law degree, funny enough. I got an MBA, and I worked in the corporate world for a while.
Mm.
First, I was a diplomat. I was a U.S. diplomat for a while, working for the federal government, and then I
Oh,
worked
wow.
in the corporate world as a management consultant, helping big companies with strategy stuff. And then I was like 31 years old, had my first kid at home, and I was like, "What am I doing? I want something that's actually meaningful, where I can produce
Mm.
real impact in the world and feel really good about my work, and have a path to creating hopefully some long-term wealth for me and my investors." And that's when I quit corporate life and started doing mobile home parks.
Wow. Wow. Because that's interesting. And I didn't know a lot of that about you. So thanks for sharing that. And so you guys are up to how many pads now?
We, as of today, I think I checked this week, we have 83 parks and it's around 7,600 lots.
Yeah.
And we'll probably buy another 10 parks this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome, dude. And so like was there and I love to get it in talking to successful entrepreneurs like yourself, because it's like, why, like, was there a point in time that you were like, because you did just mention it a little bit, was there a point in time where you're like, man, I can actually go and build something big? Like, was there a point in time that you had like a cognition that was like, hey, I can go do this and build it big?
So let me answer that in two ways. I'd say the much bigger mental hurdle for me was to say, I'm going to leave my W-2 job and make a bet on myself,
Mm.
right? To go do my first deal. That was the huge hurdle. And in my case, I was like a high achiever, and I always I looked for approval from people and institutions, right? So I like went to fancy schools and I got good grades and I got the law degree and I worked at like a fancy company and I wanted to get good reviews from my bosses. I was always very much like, kind of towing that line. And so it was a huge mental transformation for me to say, I'm going to quit all that. I'm going to go start buying mobile home parks,
Mm.
right? And make a bet. And I hope it goes well. And if it doesn't, it might fail, right? That was a huge leap. And my inspiration there, really my guiding light, was my immigrant grandfather, who came to this country with nothing and has a terrible accent. If he speaks English, you could hardly understand him. And he has, cracked hands from working as a farmer and a mechanic all his life. And he came here with nothing and made a huge bet on himself. And extremely self-reliant, right? Lived the American dream, worked his butt off every day, and ended up pretty financially successful, right? By saving his money, playing his cards right. So
Wow.
I figured, if here I am, born in America, native English speaker, I have an education, I have so many more advantages, right? The only thing I was lacking was courage. And I was like, all right, let me go do this. So that was my big hurdle. Once I started the company, there was never a day when I was like, oh, maybe we can make this thing big. It was just one step at a time, one deal at a time, right? Making mistakes every day, learning from them, trying to do better the next time. We thought once we got to like 20 parks, maybe we'd be fine. We'd be good. We wouldn't want to grow anymore. And actually what we realized is, as you get bigger and you get more scale, things kind of get easier, right?
For
Life
sure.
doesn't get harder and more complicated. Life actually gets easier as it gets bigger.
Yeah, yeah, and totally. And then I've like experienced the same thing. Like the more scale you get, the easier it gets. But you mentioned something there that was interesting, and like, not to, I know people, I was talking to a guy the other day, like he had set up a call with me and he's looking to get into parks and things. And he's like, well, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need? Like, what traits do I need? And it's the thing that I told him, I used a different word. I said, you need balls, right? And you
Yeah.
said you need courage. Like, you have to have that.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say balls, but yeah. Yes.
You can say whatever you want on this podcast. I usually cram an F-bomb in there somewhere. I'm sure it's coming. That's just who I am. But you have to have that, because like real estate is like you're figuring it out. Like, okay, you put the earnest money down. Okay, like, how am I going to get the money for this deal? Okay, well, I got to figure that out, and I got to figure this out, and got to figure the lending out. So there's a lot of pieces that there is some uncertainty there in the beginning, especially when you're doing like your first few deals. right?
Yes, 100. And you're building the plane while you're flying it, and you're hoping no one else on the plane realizes that the nose isn't built yet, and the tail isn't built yet, and the wing isn't built yet. I was told. I mean, I'm sure you can remember. I remember on the first deal. I'm sure you have stories like this. The first deal, like you get the deal tied up because you convinced the broker that you're legit and you can close, even though
Yeah.
you're not legit and you can't close. And then you go pitch the investor and say, "Hey, I want your money to buy this deal because I'm working on the debt. The debt's coming." Meanwhile, you go over to the lender and you're like, "Hey, lender, you got to lend to me. I got all the equity, right? Everything. You're but it's not lying. It's just you have a vision and you're creating it as you go until you will your vision to become the reality.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I've never heard of anybody putting it like that before. Like you're building the plane as you go, like especially in this business on the real estate, because it's like you're working these deals, but the fire you don't get the fire in your ass until you get the deal under contract, right? Because a lot of this, like the bank's not gonna. If you're like, hey, I got some deals, they're gonna be like, okay, when you have it under contract, send me the PSA and send me the other information. Right. So it's
Right.
hard to kind of build that stuff when you don't have a deal. And like the same with the investors. Hey, I got some deals. They're like, yeah, well, send me a deal when you have something.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to put your ass out there and be like, hey, I'm putting this deal under contract. I'm putting 50 grand down for earnest money. Like, hey, let's go. Then you figure it out and you're on a time crunch. So
Yeah.
like,
Just that's how you learn. That
yeah.
is people like there is no MBA that you should go get or master's in real estate. Like the education is what you just said. Get the deal tied up, put down your 50K earnest money. Now you got the 45-day due diligence period. It's go time. That is your accelerated education in mobile home park investing right there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that's like when I mentor people, like the first thing that we do is we start putting LOIs out there. Hey, we're finding deals in your area. We're putting out LOIs. We're talking to brokers. We're doing all this. We're getting into action, right? Because some of these people just get stuck in analysis paralysis. They never send an LOI because they're like, what happens if they accept it? Well, I don't know, right? Like we don't know, right? They accept it and then you figure it out from there. Exactly what you said. But I think people get stuck in that and not actually taking the action and being willing to be a bit uncomfortable, because it can be uncomfortable,
So let me ask you a question. You just mentioned about your strategy and when you mentor people, right? That
Yeah.
you push them to action, which I think is great. Can you tell me more broadly about your mentorship program and why is it that you're busy building your own mobile home park investment company? Why is it a good use of your time to mentor newbies?
I think for me, great question, by the way. And so there's a little bit of a backstory to this too. When I was in the insurance business, like I sucked and did really bad, and I built it up to where I had a team of over 100 salespeople, and my job was like to get people in, and like my goal was to get them to make their first 100 grand. Right, like these people I brought into the business, they never made more than 30 grand in a year before. And there's just something satisfying to me about like seeing that person get over those barriers and like helping them like break through and like, oh yeah, I can actually do this. It's not that hard, right? It's just like a personal fulfillment thing for me. Is it my best use of time? Probably not. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you make 15 grand off of somebody, like it doesn't really move the needle, right? But I think from a fulfillment perspective, I've just always enjoyed doing that because I've been the little guy before that's like scared, that doesn't want to, like, doesn't have the confidence, doesn't have the know-how to do something. And like, I feel really good when I push someone over that barrier and they're like, man, you really helped me. Like I have people today that tell me like, Derek, when I had the insurance office, like, Derek, you're still one of the best leaders that I've ever had, like, because you pushed me and you got me to achieve these things that we never thought that we could achieve. And I like that. Like, that's
Yeah.
cool to me. Like, that's worth more than money to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally. I can look back at 2 or 3 bosses I had who legitimately changed my life. Right? They changed the course of my life, and I will be eternally grateful to them for the mentorship they put into me, and sometimes the hard lessons they taught me. Like, no, you do not do it that way. So it's amazing that you're carrying that forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing, you can probably speak to this. I don't know if you ever played sports, but I remember when I first got into like serious basketball, into AAU basketball, where we practice like a couple hours, like a few times a week. That was, I don't know, maybe I was probably in middle school, but the coach, he was so focused on discipline and fundamentals. Like, we didn't do this complicated stuff. Like, half of practice was like passing and ball handling. And like, I hated it. He was tough. Like, if we screwed up, we had to run suicides, and like, I hated it. But now I look back at that and I'm like, man, that was the start of building a foundation of discipline and like worrying about the small things and kind of like, so I hated it at the time, but like looking back on it now, I'm like, man, he really helped me.
Yeah. So this is why I have my kids doing jujitsu. We go on Saturday mornings, we go wrestle, and my kid's life does not have a ton of hardship in it, for better and for worse. Right? Like, and I realized I needed, in order, if I want to give my kids the right values, I need to put them in tough situations where they're going to fail, and they need to kind of raise their game and get better. And sometimes you got to have that coach has high expectations, who's pushing you even when you're tired, saying do it better, right? You can do better than that.
For sure.
So I'm doing that through martial arts, through sports, and also through chores and work and other stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you need to teach that value and put that into your kids, because our kids, like, let's be honest, they're gonna grow up with a great life, right? And probably the same for you. And I think it's important that we instill that in them, and instill some hardship, some pain, and like, hey, you got to kind of figure it out. You got to build a little grit. And I think what you're doing in the martial arts thing is like, I think that's great. But I wanted to ask you, because we were talking about putting the deal, like building the plane as you go, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's pressure involved in that. You were working a, sort of a W-2 before. Maybe there was some pressure involved, but what you did before, there was probably some. But like, I think your success as an entrepreneur is going to be attributed to your ability to handle stress and pressure. So how has that changed for you since like buying your first deal till now? You have a big organization. Like, how do you handle pressure differently now?
Definitely, it definitely exists. I definitely am not living in nirvana now with no worries. I got plenty of worries and stress. I think the first few deals that we did, the questions were much more fundamental. We like this park, we want to buy it. Okay, now we need to write a letter of intent, an LOI. What's that? How do I do that? Okay, now we need to write a purchase and sale agreement. What's that? Do I need a lawyer? Where do I do that? Right? Okay, now I need to review a title report. What's that? I've never done that before. Now I need insurance. What's that? Right? It's really basic learning, right? So, and like you said, you got the clock running and you got money in the line. So that's stressful. Just learn stuff. And then it's time to raise the money. I'm like, I've never raised money before for equity from investors. So we went to our closest friends from high school, my cousins, and we were literally passing the hat for like $5,000 checks. Like, who has $5,000 saved up in your bank account, right? We're trying to raise $100,000 total. Can we find 20 people who will each give us $5,000? That was our first deal. And literally, we had no idea if we would or wouldn't. We hoped we would, but there was a chance that we'd pass the hat and it would come up empty and we couldn't close the deal, right? So it was much more like of an existential question. I'd say now here we are, where I've got more than 100 employees, and the nature of the questions change a little bit. I would say the big things I'm thinking about these days are around like kind of risk management and portfolio allocation. We bought these 83 parks. We're in 15 states. Does it make sense for us to be in, Florida, where we only have 2 parks, or should we exit that market because we don't really have scale there and focus more on North Carolina, South Carolina, where we're growing? We have 8 RV parks. Is that strategic for us, or is that kind of non-strategic? And should we kind of sell it, even if we're not going to hit the best financial returns, so that we can focus more on our kind of core business? That's the kind of stuff I'm dealing with more these days. Also initially, when you think about capital, it was close friends and family. And then it grew to like friends of friends and family of family. And then it grew to high net worth investors and family offices who I hadn't known previously. And now we're dealing with, institutional capital, like multi-billion-dollar pension fund kind of discussions. So it's different stuff that I'm thinking about these days.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think? Well, I guess, so your first capital raise, you touched on it, a little bit. And I've talked to multiple people about this. And I think even for me, like the first capital raise was a bitch. Like, it was just tough. Like, okay, you want to put, I'm just like you, dude, whatever you want to put in, brother, come on in. I'm trying to get the damn deal done. Like, was it tough?
Yeah, I think it's tough for several reasons. Number one, I never asked anyone for money before. And I didn't have a background in sales. I didn't know the right way to open up that conversation and have that conversation. It felt very awkward to me when you think about our culture now. We think about money. To go to somebody I've known forever and be like, hey, do you want to write me a check to invest in my deal and take a risk on me? And I think I'm going to do a good job, but I might not, and I might lose your money, right? That was hard for me kind of psychologically to start doing that. And then secondly, I had no track record. So, there was nothing to show people other than make a bet on me, right? I haven't done mobile home parks personally before. I think this is a good deal. And my grandfather bought a couple of parks back in the day, but like, I want you to make a bet on me. But I think the thing that helped us get the flywheel going on capital was the mobile home park asset class made a lot of sense. People get it. People understand there's a deep need for affordable housing and there's not enough supply and people need a place to live. And so I think the mobile home park story made sense. I think it helped me to say my family have been doing it for a long time. And people saw me. I think they saw that I combined kind of that scrappy hands-on operator background from my family. Plus I had like some fancy degrees and I'd worked in the corporate world. And I think that kind of combination gave people confidence.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and when people ask me, this very question, like, how do I do this without a track record? I think exactly what you did. Like, okay, you may not have a track record in buying and turning around a value-add mobile home park or whatever, but there's other things that you've done. Like for me, like I managed a sales team of over 100 commissioned salespeople, a bunch of like money hungry, like craziness, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot involved in that, and those skills do transition over. And I think, people downplay that a lot and just saying, well, I don't have any experience. Well, you do have experience in a lot of things, maybe not just this directly. And you've done other things successfully. So I think it's important, like, little nugget for people to like, just, be a little bit more, like, give yourself more credit for what you've done, instead of just like, oh my God, I'm not Daniel or Derek. I don't have all this stuff. Like we didn't either at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, are you a nurse? Like if you're a nurse, you know how to talk to patients and you know how to think analytically and you've passed exams and gotten licensed, right? Like you can do that. You can figure out mobile home parks. Are you a welder? Like, great. You understand physical infrastructure probably way better than I ever will, right? Like you said, build on your strengths.
Switching to some like mobile home park stuff here. Like when you're going through a park, right? You're walking through a park. Like, what do you look for and notice? Where do your eyes first go?
That is such a good question that I'm taking time to think about it. That is a beautiful question. I think my eyes probably go first to the roofs of the mobile homes. I think I'm looking at roofs. And if you look at the roofs, you're quickly understanding, are they single wide or are they double wide? Are they flat roofs, which are typically kind of older, or are they pitched roofs? Is it composite shingle, which is, again, a marker of quality? Do you see tarps on roofs, which is a symbol of not quality? Is there moss? Are they overgrown? You see a lot by looking at the roofs.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you on that. And for me, it's like, and I thought of this question, I'm like, I don't even think I really know what I look at first. I'm like, generally, it's more of like a feel thing for me. Right. Because if I'm actually looking at the park, I've looked at the numbers and the numbers make sense. So now my next step in Derek's process is to like, hey, let's go look at the park. Like the numbers make sense, right? Let's go look at the park and see what it's about. Let's look at the overall cleanliness, like how old are the homes? But there's a lot of factors in here. Like if all the homes are park owned, then I'm looking at it slightly differently than if they're all tenant owned, right? Yeah. So it really just depends. But for me, it's kind of like just an overall, like, what's the quality of this park? And then I correlate that to the numbers that I'm paying for it.
You probably do this too. You end up creating mental models of different flavors of mobile home parks based on the ones you've looked at or the deals that you own. You're like, oh, this one reminds me of Holly Court, or this one reminds me of Cedar Acres, right? Similar tenant profile, similar infrastructure. And then it kind of parks of different kind of archetypes. I'll be like, okay, this is going to be, this is an urban high density park and it's old and the homes are, not the most attractive, but there's a lot of value here, right? And people are showing private ownership in their homes, right? That's like one style of park. Or this is rural, big lots, maybe got some cars up on blocks, right? There are different styles. And you kind of create your own archetypes to link them to.
Yeah, totally. You ever had a deal that looked like you looked at it on paper. You're like, man, this is a freaking great deal. Maybe you bought it, maybe you didn't. But well, let's just assume you saw a great deal and you bought it. But then when you got into it, you're like, man, this is a war zone, or it's not as great as it looked. Did you ever have one of those?
I had two of those. One of them was one I thankfully didn't buy. It's so funny. It was in Modesto, California. A broker showed it to me. On paper, Modesto was growing. Housing prices were good. It's close to the Bay Area, 100 plus units, all tenant-owned homes, city services. I'm like, this thing sounds good. And I went and showed up, and it literally looked like the zombie apocalypse. Like,
Oh, wow.
I feel sad to talk about the conditions people were living in. Like, it was a lot of people who were addicted to methamphetamines, like wandering
wow.
the streets, surrounded by trash in like zombie position with like windows broken and like shopping carts. And it looked like a sci-fi movie, like after the bomb drops, where like humanity is no longer operating with the same standards of civilization. I was like, wow, like these people really need help.
Yeah.
And like a nonprofit should buy this and fix this, and like this is not the right investment for me. This is not where I want to spend my time and effort as an investor.
Sure.
So that was a wake-up call when, like, on paper it all looked good. I went in there like hunky dory thinking, okay, this thing makes a ton of sense, and I'm like, this is not what I was expecting. And then there was another one like that we actually bought, Puyallup River RV Park, just outside Seattle. Great housing market, ton of technology growth, Amazon and Microsoft kind of driving up the housing market in Seattle. So there's a lot of need for affordable housing there. And this was an RV park. We bought it, knowing we'd need to invest time and money and effort to clean it up and raise the standards. There was everything going on there. Needles from heroin. Someone is apparently running like a prostitution thing out of one of the RVs. An old lady who was blind pulled a gun on our community manager. I'm like, how does a blind person have a gun? That's a little scary in the first place. Like everything happened there. And it was really funny. The tenants went to the media, and there was a news story about us as the big bad landlords who were, treating residents unfairly. Like the residents who planted that story were the ones who were selling drugs and doing prostitution.
Of course.
And I have no moral qualms about moving those people through to another place.
No,
no. Like I don't believe that affordable housing means substandard housing or crime, right? Like I want to provide communities that I myself would be proud to live in, and I want my residents to feel proud to live in it. I want to be a place where your kids can get off the school bus and walk safely to their house, and they're not seeing drugs and crime and prostitution, and they feel safe, and parents feel safe raising their kids there. That's what I want to do, and I feel perfectly fine getting the drug dealers out of there.
Yeah, same, because it's not fair to the rest of the community, because you have 5% of the community is doing this kind of stuff. Like, it's not fair to the rest of the community, and they really, like, that small percentage drags the entire community down. They attract other junk in there and other things going on. There's kids in the park, and the media is just quick to jump on that kind of stuff because, oh, evil landlord.
That's an easy narrative. That's a narrative everyone understands.
Yeah, your friends over at NPR are quick to jump on that.
Have you been doing this long enough that you've had any negative news stories about you yet?
Absolutely. Yes.
Tell me about that.
For sure. Yeah. So we had this park that we purchased, and it was a war zone. It was a war zone, like crime, drugs, everything else. And, there was this gate in the back of the park that we had basically shut because that's where all the drug dealers came in through the back of the park. And like, there was needles and all this other stuff, like in this little path out. And so the media got in touch and say, oh, that's the way that the kids walk to school. The landlords are shutting this off. They're getting rid of they're getting rid of people, kicking people out of their homes. And it's like that whoever wrote that story, they wouldn't let their kids walk through there. They wouldn't even go to that park and drive through it at night. Yeah. There's no way that they would. Right. Yeah. And so I just, unfortunately, like inevitably in this business, if you're buying a bunch of these things, that's going to happen at some point. That's going to happen at some point because the drug dealer is not going to like that you're cutting off their whatever. And they're like, I'm gonna go do this, right? But like, I can feel good at night, and I'm sure you can too, knowing you're going in, you're improving these places that would otherwise go, who knows where they would be if no one ever bought them and injected any capital into them. You're getting I mean, we've literally turned around an entire like an entire neighborhood in Tampa. If anybody knows Nebraska Avenue in Tampa, like it was the mecca for prostitution and crackheads. And like, look, there's still an element of that there. But because we have a row of parks there that we cleaned up and got all that out, like you can actually, I've even had people tell me like, dude, Nebraska, I literally think you guys cleaned up those parks has made that area better because they're doing some more development and things over there now too. And so combined with us doing that, it shifted like the trajectory of that community. And you think that like you actually have more power to do that than you think. And it's interesting because like going to that area now, like I feel totally safe going through the parks there and have ever since that we started turning those around. But before that, you pull in and it's like,
Looking around.
This is a mess. But those parks, I mean, they probably, I mean, one of them, so we bought these two from an owner. He was like 85. He lived maybe a few miles from the park, hadn't been to the park in like 10 years. So when we did the walkthrough, he's walking through and he's like, he didn't even know how crappy his park had gotten because his park manager was basically renting the vacant park-owned units to prostitutes at nightly rate. And, everything else was going on, kind of like your story.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I 100% agree with you. We have so much ability in this industry to change the trajectory of people's lives, their families' lives, and even entire neighborhoods. And that's what makes this so satisfying. Like I think about a park we bought in Yakima, Washington, which was 90% vacant when we bought it. We brought in 70 new homes and sold them and basically created a whole new neighborhood that didn't exist before, right? And it's a neighborhood of owners, right? It's not a neighborhood of renters. People who now own their own home. They're building equity in their home. They're not going to be bouncing from apartment to apartment. They've got a place to live and raise their kids, and the kids will be stable and be in the same schools, right? You think about all the way that this kind of trickles down to impact people's lives. Makes me feel really proud of what we do.
For sure. And especially like, well, let me ask you this, like, we always hear it like, oh, we're in an affordable housing crisis. Like, how bad do you think that actually is? Because there's never really like, oh, this is how bad it actually is. Like, what's your perception on that? Or how do you feel like, how bad is the affordability crisis right now?
So I actually wrote a big report about this in my last job before I became a mobile home park investor. I worked at this company called McKinsey, and they had a think tank. And I got to write a big report to quantify the housing crisis in California. We just looked at California as a single state and try and say, how many additional housing units would we need in order to meet the demand that exists here? And basically the way we looked at this was we looked at, you can look at housing costs as a percent of kind of monthly income. You can look at kind of total housing supply available relative to population size, right? There are a lot of different ways to look at it. And so I think the basic answer is it varies hugely market by market, of course.
Sure.
What you've got going on in Twin Falls, Idaho is different than what you have going on in Charleston, South Carolina. But I think generally speaking, a lot of people kind of an accepted number is affordable is defined as 30% of monthly income. If you're spending 30% of your income on a rent, that is considered an affordable threshold. And I think what we see is a lot of mobile home parks are charging a lot less than 30% of monthly income. If you have a family in the workforce where mom and dad are both working, and sometimes we have multi-generational households with 3 or even 4 adults who are of working age in some of our parks, right? Like you probably have some parks that have 4 or 5 cars parked in front of each house.
Oh yeah.
Right? When you have 4 or 5 cars parked in front of each house, you're right. It's not 8-year-old kids who are driving. It's mom and dad and uncle and grandpa and auntie are all living in one home, right? And so household income, even if they're on working minimum wage, might be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month in that household. And so I think mobile home lot rent is still deeply affordable. And I think over time, due to market forces, it will continue to rise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer. What's your how do you think about what rent you should be charging in any given market?
yeah. So, I mean, there's no, I'm a believer there's really no like absolutes. Like there's always, a different situation to say, look at something like this. So, I think people always look at the average 2-bedroom apartment rent and say, hey, let's cut that in half and see what we should be charging. And there's some truth to that. I think there's some validity to that piece of data, right? There's some validity to that. But I also think it's like, you have to look at, the 30% thing of what you're talking about. So if the average median household income is 50 grand, 30% of that is this, or you can do a little bit lower than that. But it's also like, what is someone willing to pay? Right. So like, what is just because all the mom and pop owners are charging $400 and they've been charging $400 for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that's the market. They're all full. Like no one's left or moved in recently. So no one really knows what someone is actually willing to pay. So instead of just taking data and like just kind of looking at it and like, okay, that's truth. We actually get boots on the ground and figure it out for ourselves. Because a lot of times what the broker thinks, with the park, the consensus mom and pop, with all the other 20 parks down the street are charging, is not actually the market.
Yeah.
And
So, but when you say boots on the ground, how do you figure it out?
well,
What
you
do you
run
do?
test
What data
ads.
points do you look at?
You run test ads. You run test ads. That's really the main data point. It's like, hey, let's run test ads at this particular amount and see what we get. And, if nobody answers and people are telling you to F off, then okay, it's probably a little too high, right? But I think that's a more valid data point than just pulling the comps, right? Like, then, because you may miss out on an opportunity because you thought the market was this versus what it actually should be. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I think that is well said. And
Yeah.
I've noticed the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if you look at apartments, it's a more institutional asset class and it's more liquid because tenants turn over more frequently. So you get kind of a much more accurate signals from the market about what rent prices should be.
Correct.
Mobile home parks are more mom and pop owned. Tenants turn over very infrequently because they own their own homes. And so you have entire markets where, like you said, owner number one is pricing at 400 because owner number two up the road is pricing at 400 and owner number three up the road is pricing at 400. And they've all done that. And they've done, $15 annual increases. And so they've just stayed at a certain level. And that's not necessarily reflective of what people in the market are actually willing to pay, especially when you compare it to apartment prices. And if you're, a fraction of what an apartment charges, then, I don't believe there is some kind of naturally ordained law that says mobile home park lot rents need to be, some, 1/3 of apartment rents. I think in a lot of cases, tenants love mobile home parks and would love to own their own home and have their own driveway and their own backyard and not share walls with a neighbor, right? In many
Correct.
cases, tenants would prefer our product to renting an apartment.
Absolutely, they would. And like, I don't want to say I've never heard this, but like the residents in our communities are extremely happy. Like it's not like, oh my God, I hate living in the trailer park. Maybe some of them say that, but it's more so when they have, the nasty people around them or people doing things that make that life like not good and unbearable. Or the prior owner just doesn't give a shit, which is a lot of the case sometimes when we're buying from mom and pop, unfortunately. But I think just to piggyback on what you said, like the product is a great product. Like you have your own little yard, you got your own space, you got your own walls, you can call it yours. And people like that. And I think it's a valuable thing. And like, unfortunately, we can't build any more of these things, right? Like you can, but not like in Charlotte, North Carolina. Like you're not going to build one there. It's not happening. And that's where really the affordability issues are and where they're needed. So,
So you say you think your residents are satisfied. How do you know that? Are you surveying residents?
Well, I think just for me, inevitably hey, I'm going to go to the park for 15 minutes and just see a couple projects they're doing. I inevitably get in conversations with people. Oh yeah, I think if you separate, hey, what's going on in their life, whatever, versus their living circumstances, I think that a majority of them are happy and satisfied with where they live, right? It's a clean, safe, affordable place, right? Because they look at the other options and they're like, am I going to go? And I like, this place is cool. Like a lot of residents like the parks. There's just
Yes,
something about I don't know if it's the lifestyle or just, it's a more of a community feel versus even the place that
100%.
I live here. Like,
100%. It's something, there's something almost magical about the architecture of mobile home parks. You think about the
yeah,
fact that you've got, I thought about this a lot. You have 100 houses or whatever it is on small lots, right? A typical mobile home lot is maybe 30 feet wide by 70 or 80 feet deep. So you get density, so you get to be close to your neighbors, but you're not stuck on top of them. And you're not sharing walls with them. You have enough separation that you can have your private house, but it's still high density enough that you get a neighborhood feel. And
right.
then everyone owns their own home, so they stay long term. So you build these long term community ties, much more than you would have in an apartment building.
For sure.
And I think it's a really compelling offering, right? I look at in a lot of our parks, if someone gets sick, or let's say someone's kid gets sick, I'm gonna, mom or dad needs to go to work. There's an older person next door who'll watch the kids. We see that happening, or some people helping each other out with all sorts of things. Like there's just
Totally.
really deep community ties in a lot of our parks.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that if there wasn't so much stigma with, movies and 8 Mile and Trailer Park Boys, like I think there would be like more people that would I don't want to say willing to live that lifestyle, but it wouldn't be such like a degradation to them if they're like, hey, I'm living in the trailer park. If we didn't have all this media that showed it
Yeah,
negative.
yeah. I mean, that's also really regional. So I started out on the West Coast. That's where I'm from, and more recently we've been, acquiring parks in the Southeast. I think in the Southeast you find more of that stigma around trailer park trailers, trailer lifestyle, because I think it's a more prevalent form of housing. It's a more stigmatized form of housing.
Mm,
Whereas on the West Coast, I think that the stigma is not as deep. And you look at like Mountain View, California, or Sunnyvale, California, it's the heart of Silicon Valley. And, you're not touching a single family home for under $2 million. And you've got like Google engineers and Stanford PhDs and stuff who are living in mobile home parks in Mountain View and Sunnyvale. And,
yeah.
a manufactured home will cost $500,000 in one of those parks.
Wow.
And it's pretty much completely destigmatized, right? We just see it for what it is, which is a high density, single family manufactured community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at what's the big park that Dustin just sold at
Oh,
Marcus and
Point
Miller?
Doom in Malibu.
Point Doom. Like, how
Yeah,
much do
I think
houses go for in that beast?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's the
a lot.
biggest mobile home park deal of all time. What over $200 million? I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Something like
yeah.
that. Yeah. So I wanted to I know we talked a little bit about this before, but transition to hey, more. Let's like. What I know you said you do boxing and do some other things. Is there anything else you do to stay sharp and other than physical activities?
I guess I'm not trying to stay sharp. I'm trying to stay calm. I'm trying to probably get centered and focus on what really matters. And so
Mm,
probably the biggest practice for me is observing a Sabbath every week from
mm,
Friday night to Saturday night. That's a religious thing that I observe as a Jewish person. I don't work. Try to use my phone minimally. I'm not on email. I'm not doing business deals. Like Friday night to Saturday night, that's sacred time for me, where it's between
mm.
me and my family and God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
my
love
biggest
that.
thing. And like, I tell people all sorts of all the time, whether you have any religious belief or not, it's okay if you're a total atheist, you don't believe in any higher power. This would still be great for you to one day a week take a digital detox, get off your phone, stop doing deals, and focus on what matters to you. Everyone can benefit from that.
What does matter most to you?
Maybe the best father I can be to my kids.
Mm,
That's the biggest thing. Also, at a very deep level, like I am a religious person. I want to get tight with God and understand God and feel God in my life. That's something that really resonates with me. I think every person is put on this world for a purpose. If there wasn't a reason for you to be here, you wouldn't be here. Right? I believe there's a higher power and a bigger plan, and everyone is here for a reason, and you have some mission to fulfill in your life, and you might not know what that is yet. You might be here on this earth to help out a stranger, and you haven't even met them yet. But so I try and live every day trying to keep that bigger mission in mind.
Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, I think that I'm a very spiritual person, so that's very important to me. Like, staying connected and like not, this whole like physical universe or whatever you want to call it in. It's just kind of like it's just stuff. Like a lot of it doesn't even matter really in the scheme of things. And we get so wrapped up into like, oh my God, this person said something, this was going on in the media, and it like, kind of draws us in instead of like, hey, I am actually like, this is just all kind of whatever, right? I think Steve Jobs was talking about things being made up, and I tend to agree with that. A lot of this shit is just made up, right? And it's just staying grounded and like knowing who you are is like, I believe I'm a spiritual being. So like, I'm like senior to a lot of this stuff, right? Versus me being stuck in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can relate to that. And it's funny how a lot of people start out in business. Initially, you're very money motivated. Obviously, most people want to get money so that they can buy a house or buy a car or put their kids through school or take care of their parents, right? That makes sense, right? Money is important to live comfortably and get the things you want. But it's funny how the longer you do business and the more deals you do, you get numb to the money and you realize the money is not actually gonna make you happier or less happier once you reach a certain level.
Sure.
Right? There are people who are struggling, they don't have enough to eat. And right, that incremental $100 would really help them and their family. But once you reach a certain level of comfort, we closed a refinancing this week. A $4 million check came into our account. That's not my money. I didn't make $4 million, but we'll share it with our investors, and Three Pillars gets a piece of it.
Sure.
Just day of the life. Like we hardly celebrated. I was like, all right, here's $4 million. Okay, fine. Like what's next? Like there's no emotions or feelings around it, and you realize clearly money is not what's going to make you happy or not happy. It's clearly bigger, deeper things.
Correct. Correct.
And I see, I kind of at a spiritual level, I see my family life as a manifestation of that, right? Like we as humans are able to create more little humans, which is wild, and then like try and sculpt them in the way we want to sculpt them. And that to me feels like the biggest responsibility and opportunity of my life.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you completely on that. And it's like, for me, it's like, I love the game. Like if I didn't have a game to play, right, then I would just go crazy and be like, ask my wife. She'd be like, oh, he's like, play the game, dude. If you're not playing the game and you're not like in the game and you're not playing a big enough game, like if the game I'm playing is too small, then like, I don't know what happens, but I think something happens spiritually to where like, hey, the potential that I do have sort of blows back on me, and I get mad or I get lazy or like something, right? The potential that I could have used actually gets used against me if I don't use it. Is almost like that. Like you get lazy or you do something stupid or you're scrolling. You're wasting time. You're scrolling or doing something else stupid, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about the game, and the game has to be big enough for me to be interested and excited about it. And like what we were talking about earlier about putting the deal under contract, like the first deal, and you got all this shit going on, you're building the plane. When you're in that, you're like, oh my God. But then you look back and you're like, that's actually what I loved. I loved that game. It wasn't the money that I got from it. It was the game of figuring the shit out, right? Because there's barriers. You got this coming in, and you just like figure it out.
Yeah. I love that. And I just want to add on to that to say I'm like the biggest patriot. I love the United States of America. It's created so many opportunities for me and my family. Came here with nothing. And just, there's so many opportunities in this country. I see opportunity everywhere. Literally, I drove down the street this morning and I look around like oh, there's the guy collecting the trash. Interesting. What kind of business is that? How does that work? Like, oh, here's a guy who's digging a ditch to do utilities, and I saw the name of the utility contracting company. I was thinking about that. I see opportunity everywhere. And as you said, like a lot of the satisfaction of this is figuring out where's the opportunity and how do I make the right moves to capture it. Right.
For
And
sure.
I still truly believe that America is the land of opportunity. And you can come here with nothing. You can come here hardly speaking English. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. There is a ton of opportunity. And I meet guys and gals in our business all the time who did not come from, a place of privilege, who have done very well for themselves by working hard and looking for opportunity. And like you said, kind of figuring out the game. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about America.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's interesting because you find, and I think it's, it has to do with media and all the other bullshit that's out there that convinces people that this place is so bad. Like it's such a just terrible place. Right.
Can I
The
tell you about one
media.
of my favorite mobile home park investors? I'm not going to say his name. I don't know how much he wants to share the story. But he's a guy who you might know. He's in our industry. He was born in Mexico and he came to the U.S. He was smuggled in on a donkey as a baby across the border.
Wow.
His dad's job was managing a berry farm. And in the summer, he and all his brothers were out there in the heat, morning to night, picking berries. And he was like, this is not what I want long term. And starting at like age 9 and 10, he was thinking about business ideas and how can I buy candy at Costco wholesale, then sell it to my buddies at school and make a few bucks per candy bar. Right. And then he worked hard, saved money, but by the time he's 20, he bought his first single family house. And fast forward a few years, right, he owns a whole bunch of highly valuable mobile home parks in the Western US.
I think growing up here, like people don't value that opportunity as much as people that weren't born here and come here, because you see people that have immigrated here, that they are wildly more successful. They are extremely upbeat. They're extremely positive about life because they're like, dude, where I came from, I didn't know where I was going to get food and I might get shot or something, right? Or who knows, right?
Yes.
I didn't have clean water, dude.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly. Something we just take for granted. Yeah, I
Yeah.
turn the light switch and the lights don't turn on, right? Because there was electricity, right? We are beyond blessed.
Yeah. And so I think for people to, I couldn't agree with you more on that. I'm a massive patriot. I've always been, because this is the land of opportunity. And like, if you don't think that, you should go live in another country and try to figure it out.
Yeah, or if you don't think that, take Derek's course and learn how to find opportunities, because they're out there. It's just about mindset. I truly believe it.
Yeah, you can say, oh my God, this sucks, there's nothing going on, and you can go out there and you will see that, oh my God, that there's nothing. But if you're, so you probably had this too. You never saw trailer parks, mobile home parks, until you started looking to buy them, and you're like, oh my God, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Right. Now my wife sees me, I have mobile home park vision, right? Even when I'm driving, it's, oh, there's one.
Yeah, you can like see the old like corrugated type siding, and you're like, oh, there's one. You see
out of the distant corner of your eye, right? You're like, yeah, it's like a hunter on the savannah spotting the antelope from 1.5 miles away.
Yeah.
So I know we're probably wrapping up towards the end of the hour here. You talked about wanting to play a game that's big enough and challenging enough, and if you're not playing that game, then you will feel like frustrated in your life, like frustrated potential. So tell me more concretely, what is your professional aspiration in terms of how you want to build your business or what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I want to just build something impactful. And like, so part of this, like, I think building like a massive business and a massive like portfolio and doing that at a very high level. Yes, you get money and all that, but I think another thing it gives you, for a person that, has values, right? You get in a position of power where you have the ability to, influence people in a positive way, because there's a lot of negative influences out there, right? And if you have the ability to, because we talked about the mentorship thing, like I love impact. Like the bigger you get, I think the more impact you can have at a deeper level to people, because they're like, oh my God, this guy's successful. he's got this and he's got that. Like, maybe I should listen to this guy, right? And it's not from a like, oh my God, I want people to like listen to me or whatever, but I just think I can have a positive impact on people because I came from a, you know, a middle class, working class family, grew up in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. You know, I don't say words right sometimes. Like, you know, I'm not the highest educated person. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can still break through and
Yeah.
make something of yourself. I had a partying problem. So like, if I can like pull people out of that and get them out of those problems, and I just think I can do that if I get to a higher level and do that. And I think that that's a bigger impact than anything else, you know. I wanted to ask you this. So like, so let's just say, you know, 3 pillars, you know, Blackstone says, hey, we'll come in and pay a 3 cap for everything. And
No,
you're
thank
like,
you.
you would say no, thank you.
Quick answer. No, thank you. Yeah.
Well, let's just say that you're like, hey, I'm cashing out. What would you do next? What about a 2 cap? Would you take a 2 cap?
Yeah, actually. Yes. Yeah, I'm torn between 2 philosophical ideals when you ask me that question. The first philosophical ideal is I didn't build this thing in order to aggregate a portfolio and sell it. I built it because I want to build a long-term company that's aligned with my values and own these parks for the next 50 or 100 years. And all of my deals with my investors are set up evergreen, meaning we can hold for decades. That's what I want to do. So we've been very deliberate about building a long-term company with long-term values. On the other hand, as someone who believes in capitalism, yeah, if someone's going to pay you a stupid price that's a lot more than it's worth, you should sell. There's a price to everything. So yeah. So if I believe it's worth a 5 cap and someone offer me a 4 cap, would I sell my portfolio? No. 3 cap, still probably no. 2 cap, right? If they're going to pay me like twice what it's worth, yes, you should sell. That's the right answer. And then go do something else with your time. So what would I do if I was, I mean, the first thing I probably want to do is go start another business with my business partner. I love it. It's fun. It's creative. I enjoy it. It gives me energy. And I feel like I'm actually doing positive things in the world, creating jobs, in a good environment, creating career growth for people who don't necessarily have a ton of education, but are really smart and have great values. I love that. And we have, you know, we're creating great neighborhoods for our residents, right? We're getting great returns for our investors. So I love what I do. I'd probably go start another business. I'm too young to retire. Beyond that, if I was not doing anything, you know, money generating, I would pray, I would surf, I would do martial arts. I want to learn how to box better. I want to do yoga. I like to learn languages. I'd probably like get better at Chinese. I'd get better at Hebrew. That's the kind of stuff I'm into.
Yeah.
I'd eat a lot of food. I love to eat. I'd go spearfishing.
Yeah.
I'd catch fish. I'd make fish tacos. That's what I do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I love to eat.
How about you? What would you do?
Yeah, look, I'd cash out and go. Look, again, back to the game thing. I'd have to have a game because I can play 9 holes of golf every now and then. I'm not a big golfer. Like, I'm about the game, you know, and like that. So I would have to go find another game to play that got me interested. Right. And, you know, I'd still be working out every day. I'd probably go train to do an Ironman or go, you know, scale Mount Everest and just crazy shit like that. May come surfing with you, you know.
Great.
I would probably come do that and learn how to do
You're
that.
welcome.
I think that would be fun. And, you know, I would just have to keep the game going because I think the game, you know, keeps you young because I think the whole retirement thing is bullshit. Like, oh, you got to retire when you're 63. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? Right. You can't, like, I don't know. Right. But I just can't see myself saying, okay, I'm going to put it down and not do anything. It's like Sam Zell said in his book. People asked him when he was going to retire. And he's like, dude, I love what I'm doing. Why? I'm not retiring from anything.
Yeah.
You know, like finding the deal, getting the deal. Like, I like that. Like, it gives me, like, it adds vigor, you know, and it gives me energy. So I'd have to have another game and, you know, I'd probably start doing some more fun stuff, obviously with the family and traveling, but always keeping the game there. So I don't get bored and start doing stupid stuff. I got a couple of other questions. I got a couple rapid
Great.
fire questions for you.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
When people talk about you 20 years from now, what do you hope they say about you?
I hope they say that I did what I said I was going to do.
I love that. I love that.
That's pretty much how I define integrity. And there's a lot of noise out there. Like we were talking about, we were talking earlier about news articles criticizing mobile home park operators. Well, you might have somebody out there with a different set of values than I have, applying their value lens to my life and making certain judgments. What I say is, well, I never said I was going to do that. Here's what I said I was going to do. Did I do what I said I was going to do? The things that are important to me that I told you I was going to do them, did I do them?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Rent control, yes or no?
No.
Biggest mobile home park myth?
That mobile homes depreciate over time, like a car, and that when rents go up, tenants are vulnerable because they're not able to move their homes. That is an absurd fallacy often repeated in the media, which completely misunderstands how mobile home parks work. If a tenant no longer wants to live in a park or needs to move for any reason, whether it's a family issue or they're moving out of state or affordability, they sell their home in place to someone else who pays them money for it and is happy to move in with the new lot rent.
Yes. And they a lot of times make quite a bit of money off their home that they sell.
Exactly. It is a source of wealth creation for our park residents.
For sure.
Thank you. Yes, I should have. Yes, thank you for emphasizing that point.
Yeah. Favorite type of music?
I'm going to say, this is a little out there, I'm going to say Brazilian music. I love it. Makes me happy. Yeah.
Wow. I like that. What is Brazilian music? Is it like,
I mean, there are entire worlds. There's bossa nova, there's samba, there's...
I like bossa nova. Bossa nova.
Right. Yeah. There's like funky dance music. When I do capoeira a little bit, which is a Brazilian martial art, and they have a very rhythmic, basic music that comes from West Africa that I love.
Yeah. Favorite movie?
I like kids movies. I like clean, simple movies. You got to have like a horse in it, or maybe a pig, and there's a happy ending. That's what I like. Like Black Stallion, that's my kind of movie.
Okay. Yeah, I hate movies with shitty endings, dude. Like I don't like, like you see these movies on the people that they had to come up and then they come down and at the end they're nothing. Like I watch those movies until the come up it's at the top and I don't watch it anymore. I'm like, I don't want to see the downfall. Like I don't like that, But yeah, so anyways, Daniel, dude, it's been awesome, man. I've definitely enjoyed our chat. And when I get my podcast studio, you have to come to Orlando or maybe I can come to you and travel and we'll do an in-person one because that'll be next level.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll go there. Derek, thanks for having me on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. I wish you a ton of success in all of your endeavors. And I just want to say thank you for the mentorship that you provide to people who are just getting started. And one of the big themes that came out today was how important it is for you, how much satisfaction you get from mentoring people.
Yeah.
And I think that this podcast is a part of that. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So everyone, thank you all for tuning in to the MHP show, and we will see you all next week. Peace.